You just can't go home. This video is going to consist of my plans in the near future to return to America for a while to take care of some things. And it's also going to reflect on some previous trips that I've made there and elsewhere to simply prove the fact that you cannot go home. I really do have a love affair with old sayings because they have withstood the test of time. They are as true today as they were 100 years ago or whenever they were first constructed. No good deed goes unpunished. And the one that is one of my favorites, and you can't go home, is another one. And that popped up into my head this afternoon because I've been contemplating a trip back to America to take care of some business and to see some family and friends. Now, the last time I was in America was pushing, I think, 4 years ago. And I noticed a big change and shift happening in Las Vegas 4 years ago. They were beginning to increase prices. Vegas was always known for being cheap as far as food, uh, uh, entertainment, going to a show. There were always discounts, there were always deals. As a local, we never had it so good. We all had players' cards from different entities. I had from the station casinos. And if I went in and played $20 on a slot machine or whatever, that qualified me to get a flyer in the mail. And in that flyer were coupons that would give you half off on a buffet. And the buffet itself was only $6.99 for lunch and maybe $9.99 for dinner. And you could eat like a king as much as you want. Salad bars, meat stations, you name it, Chinese food, international foods. Just delicious. And it was cheaper then to just go out and eat. And not only did you eat great food, but you ate it for less than you could prepare it at home. And so I lived off of that hog for a long, long time. I moved there in '88 and ended up leaving in 2016. But after I left, I went back, as I mentioned, 4 years ago. And when I went back, I was surprised to see that there were no longer any real deals to be had. The room that I rented, uh, the hotel room, and I think I stayed there 10 or 12 days. I was seeing my kids. I was seeing my father when he was alive. I saw my sister while she was alive back then, which made that trip, of course, very worthwhile. I saw my kids, did a little bit of business, did a little bit of shopping, spent about 10, 12 days there. But the room went from $75 to $150 a night, unbeknownst to me until I checked in, because they were starting to add what's called resort fees to all the bills. And so I just had to suck it up. Uh, Trip cost me more than I expected, but it wasn't a deal breaker. Well, I've been contemplating going back next year, and what I'm hearing about Vegas is ugly. They have put that whole concept of jacking up the prices on ultra steroids. Um, those buffets that I used to enjoy no longer exist. In fact, many of them have been shut down. They no longer want the $200, the $500, the $1,000 weekend gambler, the proverbial middle class, the average Joe like me and possibly you, to show up anymore. They want $9 for a bottle of water. They want $35 for a hamburger and some fries. And this is on the strip. They want $16 for a Starbucks. And this isn't coming from me. This is coming from YouTube channels that I'm watching about Las Vegas. The hotels are down something like 9% occupancy. And it's all being done intentionally. They want to drive out what built Las Vegas, and that was the little gambler. And they used to lure us all in if we didn't live there, or even if we did live there. They would lure us into the casino with the coupons, the free drinks, the cheap food. If you put $10 or $20, it didn't matter, into a slot machine. There was always a waitress, a pretty girl walking around giving you a free drink. You sat at the bar. The first thing they would do if you slipped any money in is they'd plant a beer in front of you if they knew that's what you drank, and it was comped. If you played for a little while, somebody would come along and say, "Hey, you hungry?" And yeah, I'm hungry. Okay, well, what would you like? Well, give me a patty melt. Okay, how much do I owe you? It's on us, and then you tip the guy, and that's the way the world worked. No more. They've laid off bunches and bunches of people. Um, Vegas is starting to top the list, or coming into the top list of foreclosures. There's so many people being laid off. Why are they doing this? Greed. They want that money to go to the elite, the 1%, and they no longer want our little $500,000 budgets anymore. They've decided to just go for the gusto and get the big guy. I was shocked to watch a guy on YouTube recently go to a buffet that was not as nice as the one that I used to go to on the strip, and took a family of four and spent $500. And the food wasn't even as there wasn't as much variety there, and maybe not the quality too. So a clip joint is really what Vegas is. It's always been a clip joint, but that's what it's turned into. So I'm still going to have to go home, probably first part of next year. I have to renew my license. I have to do some banking. I want to see my kids. But instead of a 10 or a 12-day trip like I took 3 or 4 years ago, I forget the time frame, it's going to be a 2 or a 3-day trip just to jam everything in and get it over and done with, and then take the cab back to the airport to McCarran, or Harry Reid, they call it now, and back to the Philippines. And so it just goes to prove that you can't go home. Things change. Stuff just isn't the same as you remembered it, or as I remembered it. Takes me back to another place in time, when back in 2011, my mother passed away. And I drove from Nevada to California, where she lived, and of course attended and spoke at her funeral. And once she was buried, I stayed with a cousin, and they said, "Paul, you should drive by Chatsworth High School. You won't believe it." Now, Chatsworth High School is where I attended in the 70s. I graduated in 1972, I'm sorry. And my memory of Chatsworth High School was awesome. The picture, the mental images in my mind still remain. I recall a parking lot filled with Volkswagen Beetles, surfer vans, and the occasional muscle car. There were groups of kids that all kind of looked the same but different. You had your stoners and you had your hippies. Most of the guys wore their hair long. Most of the girls wore bell bottoms or mini skirts and halter tops. Um, Kind of a sexy sort of vibe as you're going through high school. Much more open. Everybody, the thing to do would be to drive up and down Van Nuys Boulevard on Saturday night. If there was a football game on Sunday, everybody would go to the football game, and then afterwards we would pile into somebody's car or van and go to a place called Bob's Big Boy. And that was our big night out. And occasionally somebody's parents would leave, and we'd go to their house and just trash it and have a party and drink beer and do silly stuff that teenagers do I never could figure out what they told their parents when their parents showed back up because the places would just get demolished. But I digress. I went back to Chatsworth High School after I buried my mother. And what I saw, I felt like an apparition. I felt like an out of body experience. I felt like I was a ghost hovering over something from the distant past, like an apocalypse. There was no more open, wide, happy looking campus. It was sprayed with graffiti. It had been tagged. They had erected a great big chain link fence to try to keep the taggers out. Um, there was no school that day, so there was nobody there. I didn't have any people to observe, but it looked more like a prison than it did a high school. And I thought, oh, how sad is this? Because I wanted it to look like 1971 or 72 or 73 again. I wanted it to have filled with, young people with their different groups, the hippies and and the stoners and the tough guys and the varsity guys and the sports girls and the cheerleaders and all that. It was just seemed so innocent and so pure. And that was gone. You just can't go home. And so then I made the fatal error of to say, well, while I'm here, I may as well go drive down Clearfield Street, where I grew up as a child. It was a house my father bought on a VA loan. I think he put $1 down on it, paid $8,000 for the house. And I remember him stressing over the fact that his mortgage was $90 a month and raising 2 kids. And obviously he pulled it off. But when I went there, the memories that I had of Clearfield was the first time that I rode my Schwinn bike and up and down the street. All the kids that would go out after school and we would play stickball and we would play football out in the street. We would play army. We would run around the neighborhood. We would collect bottles so we could take them back to the store to get change so that we could buy candy and things like that. We would walk to what was called a five and dime. We could sit at a counter and have a Coca-Cola and a sandwich for next to nothing. And we just kind of ran free. And we didn't have to come in until the street lights came on. In fact, our mothers would kick us out of the house so they could have a cocktail, I think, and get rid of us. And we would just go out and run amok. Well, I took that drive down Clearfield Avenue. And I got to tell you, I felt a little bit of fear. The topography, the vibe, the mojo of the street, good old Clearfield Avenue, had completely changed. It was menacing. It had degraded. It had gone into a neighborhood that was really kind of more gangy than anything else. I didn't see any kids with Schwinn bicycles with playing cards on their spokes making noises. Remember doing that? Take a paper clip and put the spokes on your wheels and drive down the street. None of that. People hanging out front, not looking all that friendly. I didn't even make the trip to my elementary school. I thought, no, I used to walk to school. And I thought, if I go by there, it's really going to be brutal. You can't go home. Things change. I've aged. I've wore the scars of time, and so have people, places, and things. If I was to go back now, a lot of the people that I knew and loved have passed away. A lot of the places, again, because of inflation and whatnot, make it untenable to turn it into any kind of long-term hangout where I can try to connect with a lot of people. I would have to just scatter, get in, get out, get it done, get on the plane, and come back to the Philippines, which is the point of the video where I am going to completely contradict myself about everything that I just said. Because every time I have left the country, not just to America, but when I've taken vacation trips to Vietnam, to Indonesia, to Thailand, after I've been there for 2-3 weeks or so, the only thing that I really want to do is get back to the Philippines, where in the fourth quarter of my life, I've managed to carve out a life with a loving, caring, beautiful woman, 3 little doggies, a really close, tight-knit community, very small circle of friends that I trust with my life. I have an opportunity to do what I want to do when I want to do it, because I've got to tell you that when I come back to the Philippines, I've come back home. Thanks for listening to me. I'll see you next time.